All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We hope everyone is staying warm and dry. I am in Bel Air, Maryland, and we are snowed in. My name is Lindsay Estes, and I am Chief of Staff for the local Media Association and Foundation. We are so excited to have you guys with us today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation. You can put them either in the chat or you can put them in the Q&A box. You can also use the chat to provide feedback, talk to other attendees. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be shared directly from Eric and his team in the next 24 hours, along with the actual presentation. With that, welcome, Eric. Thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. I hope you don't mind if I go ahead and turn on the video here. It's kind of nice to sometimes put a name with our face with the name here. It's a pleasure to meet you all again. My name is Eric Schoenfeld. I'll tell you a little bit about myself here in a second, but we're going to talk today about should publishers block AI bots, and if so, how? I know this is obviously a huge issue for all of us as media companies. But before I dive in, I thought I'd give a little bit of background on who the heck am I and why am I here talking to you about this. So, as I mentioned, my name is Eric Schoenfeld. I've been doing digital media for over 30 years, different capacities, from technology to sales to audience to editorial, you name it. I've kind of overseen all different kinds of aspects of this. I was a chief digital officer for multiple companies, both B2B and B2C. And currently, I consult for various publishers and media companies on digital audience, revenue, and technology. But the more fun things, I live in Colorado. I have a wife and two teenage daughters, 18 and 14. So yes, all prayers are appreciated. And I'm a huge Colorado Avalanche fan. So it's been a good year, been a good season so far on that. Anyway, that's kind of a little bit about me. That's why I'm here talking to you about this. I probably work with 100 different media companies every single year. Obviously, AI is a huge issue. So we've all seen the growth of generative AI. So if you look at all the chatbots and tools here, AI tools, I mean, just meteoric growth has been happening with the usage of generative AI. So this is just desktop and mobile web visits. It's not even necessarily counting the app here, but closing in on 9 billion visits in September of 2025. So this is obviously massive. It's become mainstream now. It's no longer something that's off to the side. You're seeing a lot of news out there, obviously, about the impacts of AI on media companies. I will say that most of the news I see, though, is coming from what I consider to be the more major news outlets. National, international news outlets saying that Google AI and other AI is definitely harming website traffic, and there's no denying that. I will say, however, that generative AI is not impacting all markets the same. So I kind of put together this little chart here because I work with different kinds of media companies all over mostly in North America, a couple in Europe. But if you take a look at how AI impacts, it does hit differently. So generative AI, if you are kind of a national, international news site, you're at very high risk with AI. AI is absolutely going to probably have the biggest impact on you. And the biggest issues here, local content. Local content is a strategic advantage. That's why I love, local media association, local media foundation. What you guys do here is very important because I'm a huge believer in the local aspect of things. So local content gives you a bit of an advantage when it comes to AI versus stories that people are covering on a national or international basis where there's a lot of competition for that particular story and those particular viewers. SEO dependency varies based upon market. I mean, we all depend on SEO to one degree or another, but as you move down a little bit here and you're getting into kind of city and regional lifestyle, city and regional news, if you get into even city and regional business publications, their SEO dependency is a lot less. Down here, oftentimes, I will see For example, email. Email is driving more traffic for these publishers, if they're doing an email strategy well, than search, for example. There's also then the aspect of take commodity info with a grain of salt. Please don't take that in the wrong way. But oftentimes at more the national level, whether it's a hobby enthusiast, a national news, you're covering content that's being covered by a lot of other organizations. Granted, we're all taking our own angle on it, and maybe there's some more in-depth investigative reporting or special, unique stories that are on there, or columnists that are unique to you. Those aren't going to be the commodity, but a lot of the general stories that you cover can be very commoditized. You can find, I mean, even in Google News, right? I look at a story in Google News and I can click and see 12 other outlets that are covering the same story. But as you move further down here, these begin to have less and less commodity info and more unique content. So, as a little thought for you, we're going to talk about whether you should block AI bots, but another strategy that you could look at here is the more unique your content is, either from a local perspective or from a uniqueness perspective, the less likely you are to be impacted by AI out of the gate. Yeah, I just see Damien just said, as a hyperlocal news site, we get tons of traffic from aggregators like Newsbreak. Okay. So that's a whole separate story we should talk about sometime. So Newsbreak and Smart News, for example, those kind of news aggregators, depending on how you're doing it, I don't want to go down this rabbit trail. Be very careful with those because those kinds of aggregators, if you don't do it right, you're actually giving them license to reuse your content to wherever they want, including licensing it to AI companies. Read your terms of your usage agreements with Newsbreak and Smart News very, very carefully. Also, usually they suck in your content, put it in their own template, and they're not driving traffic back to you. So if you're seeing it in Google Analytics, it's because they're adding your Google Analytics to their page views on their own app. So that's a whole separate thing with Newsbreak and Smart News. We should maybe do a different session on that another time, but just a heads up, Damien, since you mentioned that. We talked about commodity info, programmatic ad dependency. This means that the ads that we sell on our own websites, right? The more you are dependent upon programmatic advertising, that adds to the risk of the impact that AI is going to have, right? If you have a big traffic impact, it's also going to impact that aspect of your business. So I find that if you're in a city and regional business, so these are local publishers, but they're focused more on business. This would be like Biz Times Milwaukee, Baton Rouge Business Report, those kinds of publications. Those are at the lowest end of the impact scale. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen some of those businesses, their traffic's growing. Their traffic from search is actually growing. National B2B trade, we're not going to talk about that since this is local marketing. City and regional lifestyle, this is like D Magazine in Dallas, 5280 Magazine here in Denver. They're not as impacted, but they are somewhat impacted. As you move up higher, it gets a higher impact. So that's one of the things that we want to do. Oh, okay, Damien, you're CC. Awesome. Yeah, if news aggregators are a great way to do this. If you're kind of in that program, you're in good shape on that. But if you're in a standard program, you're not. So all that being said, are things changing? Absolutely. Things are changing. AI is going to radically change the way people get information. Our best defense is a good offense. Find other channels. Google News, Newsbreak if you're using the right program. Email development is huge on this. And search is still going to be an important aspect of this. So the key here is, what do we want to really do with AI? So I will oftentimes have publishers say, well, I want my content to be able to be in ChatGPT or in Gemini, so that when people are doing research, they will see my content and want to and have an impact. Okay, I do agree with that to an extent. So this is the fundamental question that you've got to ask yourself. So this is asking the question, should I block AI bots from my site? The question is, do you want visibility or do you want traffic? Right? Visibility or traffic. Right now, I am still of the bent that traffic is more important to us than AI. That's if we're doing our business models right. If our websites are designed to capture people coming in, convert them into email subscribers, right? That should be, by the way, side note, that's the number one objective of your website. The number one objective of your website is not delivering information. It's not delivering ad revenue. The number one objective of your website should always be to capture the email address of someone who's visiting. I'm overemphasizing the point. Obviously, those all have to be in balance, but most of us as media companies, email acquisition, moving people down that audience acquisition funnel is a secondary thing or isn't even a thought process. We're just trying to deliver a piece of content to them and monetize it a little bit, but we need to capture that email address. So that's a little separate little side note there. So visibility or traffic, I'm still of the opinion here, and I haven't seen any data yet to go against that traffic is more important to me as a local media organization than the visibility in AI search. Now, you all will have to examine that as your own teams and determine what makes sense to you. So let me throw this out as an example. Here is one company where we made the decision to filter out AI bots starting on September 18th last year. And you can see the blue line is the traffic from 2025. The dashed line is the traffic from 2024. And they didn't see a drop. So there was really, this is not only an organic search, but in total traffic. Total traffic, nor an organic search, there was no drop off at all. As a matter of fact, they're up 20% in organic search in November and December. And you have to pardon me, I'm getting over a cold from last weekend. So if I go on mute every now and then, it's to spare you. But there has been no downside, is what I'm saying. So we're looking at saying, would there be downside? If we blocked AI bots from our site, would there be downside? And we're not seeing it. We're not seeing any downside. Now, obviously, we're still monitoring this very, very carefully. We've got about probably 30 different publications who sometime in the last 5 to 6 months have blocked AI bots. And we're seeing the same thing. As of right now, there has been no downside to blocking the AI bots from indexing the content of their site. All right, so let's assume that you do want to block AI bots. How do you go about doing it? How do you go about blocking the AI bots? By the way, I just kind of thought this was a fun graphic. I do not think AI is evil. I remember the little tour in history here. Way back when I was very early in my career, I worked at a little IT publishing company, Windows NT magazine. And I remember the CEO came up to me once. I was just getting a drink of water, and he said, out of the blue, he just said, "So, I think this internet stuff's a bunch of bull. Do you think it has any legs?" And this was like in 1996. And I said, absolutely it does. It's going to completely change how publishing is done. And those publishers who adapted to it did great. Those publishers that didn't, they either went by the wayside or they eventually learned how to adapt to it and are adapting to it. I see AI. I've seen tons of trends come across. I've seen virtual reality. I've seen vertical search. I've seen all different kinds of trends come and go throughout my 30 years in this digital media industry. AI is another one of those seed changes that I think is just going to be as critical that publishers we need to adapt to as the internet itself when it changed our business 30 years ago. All right. All that being said, how do we block AI bots? I just thought this was a fun graphic. How do we block AI bots? All right. The first and most easiest way to do it, and we all probably already know this already, is that robots.txt file. So if you don't know about this, or if you haven't been there, just go out to whatever your website is, and then your homepage, and then put slash robots.txt, and you should see if you have a robots.txt file and what is in it. So what you want to do or have your tech team do is disallow all known AI user agents. This is not a comprehensive list over here, by the way. I just was using this as an example. You're going to want to keep tabs on this and update it regularly as this list of agents constantly changes and updates. There's new ones, there's changes, there's all different kinds of things out here. So you want to get that updated on a regular basis. Make sure you do not block legitimate search bots, right? You don't want to all of a sudden not show up in Google or not show up in Google News or not show up in Bing or whatever it may happen to be. You don't want to block those. You also don't want to block things like social preview bots so that, when someone shares your article to Facebook or shares your article on X or shares your article on LinkedIn, that those previews get scraped by a bot to show up in those apps, that those don't get blocked either. So make sure you don't do that. I will say this, robots.txt, it's optional, right? Legit companies, legit bots will respect your robots.txt, but there's a lot of non-legit players out there. Just another comment in here. It said, I once blocked an AI bot from China. I started seeing a lot of traffic from Beijing. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute. So there's some interesting pieces here. So this is like your first line of defense is your robots.txt. The bigger name legit players will respect this, but it is optional. And I'm also going to show you a loophole how all the big name legit players get around this. The second layer you can do is what's called a web application firewall, a WAF. Fancy name for saying that at your server firewall level, talk to your tech team about this. There are some systems that actually have built-in kind of bot protection. Cloudflare and Amazon Web Services are probably the two most popular ones out there. There's a big article about Cloudflare made a big deal about their new, AI blocking tool, and then frankly, good on them. It's they realized that there was a need in the industry on this for some companies out there. So blocking at the web application firewall, this is at the server level. This is your second line of defense here. And this, even if someone decides not to honor robots.txt, your web application firewall can block this. Your technical team should be able to set this up for you. It's relatively easy, especially if you're using Cloudflare or AWS. I'm not that familiar with a bunch of other ones because that goes a little bit beyond my pay grade. But this is your second line of defense. I'll show you there's a couple of other advanced methods that you can do. These do get a little more advanced. I don't think you necessarily need to do these two. There's what's called an AI bot honeypot. It's basically a maze of invisible links with all these no follow tags on it, and AI bots kind of get stuck in it and then go back and forth, and it just kind of confuses them, and they wind up timing out. There's behavioral rules. This is where you can put in behavioral rules at your firewall level, at the web application firewall, that says, hey, if I'm seeing like 1,000 requests within 2 seconds from the same IP address, something's wrong here. No human would do that, right? Or if a bot comes in, the first thing it does is it looks at my sitemap and then starts going through my site, that's a sure sign that this is a bot. So there's different things you can do with behavioral rules that, again, your tech team could help you with at the web application firewall that are clues that this is non-human traffic. Again, you want to be careful with these. You got to I call them advanced because they are advanced. You can go nuts with this. The realities are there's always going to be some problems. I guess I look at it like a grocery store. They always are assuming some loss is going to happen. There's going to be some theft. But the idea is to not just make it easy, not just leave my door wide open and everything unlocked. This third method I want to throw out, and I think this address them. Consider geo-blocking your site. So this is local media, right? You typically are going to serve a local geographic region. I have multiple local media companies I work with who have now geo-limited or geo-blocked countries, and like for instance, they're only allowing U.S. and Canada in, and not even Europe, just U.S. and Canada. Now others will open it up to certain other countries as well. Patrick, I see you're using some geo blocking on there. That's awesome. There's a couple of issues with geo blocking. Number one, I think if you look at your analytics, it's likely that the traffic coming from those geographic locales, it's probably 5% or less of your total traffic out there. There is there's other reasons behind geo-blocking. I have a whole article on my website. I don't want to go into geo-blocking here, but I have a whole article about this. I'll send it to you when I send you this recording. But that's something to consider. Again, is it 100% foolproof? No. Does it have some issues with it? Yes. We've had people who are like on vacation over in Germany, and they're like, "Oh, I can't access your site." Okay, because we're blocked to certain countries. Those are some issues we have to do. We handle those, and usually people understand with that. The idea is saying, how do we handle things at a, you know, shoot for the 95% solution. You're never going to get 100%, but shoot for the 95% solution and look for those kinds of aspects. So your robots.txt, first line of defense, web application firewall, second line of defense. I would say considering geo-blocking your site, I would seriously consider it. We've done it for probably 20 different media companies now, and we've seen no impacts, no impact on ad revenue. We've had a subscriber here or there be a little miffed that they couldn't see it because they were, in Croatia at the time. But we worked around that. That takes care of probably 95% of your issues. Patrick, I see you said here, we've noticed some companies are using US data centers. Yeah, that is true. You're going to see that more and more. Some international AI companies are setting up US data centers. So again, this is where you do your best. This is kind of a spy versus spy thing. You try to put protections in place. People try to get around those protections. You put other protections in place. People try to get around those protections. The idea is just don't make it like dirt simple, dirt easy. If you want to go down this. Leo, I want to get to your question a little bit here at the end. That kind of goes back into the should you block AI bots. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to block AI bots if you choose to. I want to bring out a very interesting thought, though, a big loophole that most media companies aren't aware of. However, The Atlantic just a few months ago did a fantastic story about this and kind of brought it out into the open. I've got a good friend of mine over in the UK, Jez Walters, with What's New in Publishing. He came on my podcast a couple weeks ago, and he talked about this. And he was at a big conference in Europe, big media conference in Europe, and he said that he was talking with some folks over there. Said absolutely, this is happening. What's happening is, let's say you've got a robots.txt. I can just show you here. Let's say you've got a robots.txt in place. You've got a server firewall in place, and the AI bots are coming in here and they're hitting your robots.txt, your server firewall. And so they're not going to index your content because you told them they can't. So what do? They work out agreements with Common Crawl and with Internet Archive Wayback Machine. Say, we'll just go out there and we'll index your content there. So they're honoring your robots.txt. They're being blocked at your server firewall, but every piece of content you've ever written is sitting on Common Crawl or sitting on Internet Archive Wayback Machine. And so they just go out there and index the content out there. This is happening. As a matter of fact, it was a very interesting article. I have a quote by Common Crawl's executive director says, you shouldn't have put your content on the internet if you didn't want it to be on the internet. Okay, but the idea is that hey, they're probably supposedly doing it for the common good, so you can go back and look at things and take snapshots of the internet for historical purposes and things like that, and that was the original intent. But now it's being monetized by giving this information to AI bots. I will say I probably should put another loophole in here, and that is the news content aggregator loophole. Newsbreak and Smart News are two of the bigger ones, depending upon your contract with them, but the generic usage agreement basically gives them unencumbered rights to repurpose your content for this kind of purpose as well. I mean, I don't have any knowledge or direct proof of it, but there's nothing that's preventing them from doing it. So be very careful with that. So this brings us down, and Leo, you kind of anticipated the next thing here. Should we block Common Crawl? Yes. I think you should block Common Crawl and Internet Archive because it's a big loophole. So you're doing if you choose that you're going to block the AI bots and you're doing this over here, but you're leaving it open here, you've locked the front door, but you left the back door wide open with a light on. By the way, depending upon what kind of paywall system you use, if your paywall system is JavaScript based, right? Client side based, not server side based. Common Crawl and Internet Archive can still grab all of your content from the raw HTML. Your JavaScript paywall isn't doing anything for that. So the bottom answer is, yeah, if you want to do the front door, you need to block the back door too. So that's kind of how you block it. I want to go back though to the big question here. That was it. Let's see here. Yeah, Leo. Leo's asking, do we want to just block them or get revenue from these bots? So, Leo, would you clarify what you mean by that? Because we're certainly not getting revenue from the tons of traffic these bots are sending us. Are you talking about revenue from them from a licensing perspective? If you are talking about the licensing perspective, I'm going to say good luck. If you're a big media conglomerate, you can work out direct contracts with some, like there have been several who have, made some pretty famous agreements with the AI companies. But if we're independent media companies or smaller media companies, it's going to be very, very difficult to arrange an agreement. And I know that there's some, there's organizations who are trying to go after it. Lindsay, I'm not sure if LMA is involved in any of that or not, but there is certainly some networks of people are going in to try to come together as a conglomerate of independents to go and negotiate. I'll be honest, as much as I applaud them for their efforts, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. Because it's just the stakes are too big. It's too much of a wild, wild west. It's too hard to control. The independents are not going to gather enough consolidated momentum to be able to have much of an impact. So I don't think it's going to happen. I do not expect to see legislation on anything like this. I mean, they nothing against, this is not a politic thing, conservative, liberal, whatever, Republican, Democrat, it's not that. It's just politicians in general don't really get technology. They don't really understand. I mean, just look at the old canned spam rules, the new, privacy rules that are things that are happening. The theory is there. The application doesn't make sense when you really know the technologies behind it. So I don't expect to see this happening here. It talks about micropayments. I've seen all different kinds of micropayments. You know what? I don't see momentum. I don't see mass or momentum on either the micropayment concept, on the licensing concept. I just don't see any mass or on the government intervention angle, I just don't see mass or momentum happening. In other words, there is not, I do not believe there's going to be a savior coming for us as local publishers. So it's our job. It's now our job to take this responsibility in our own hands. And we have to decide, do we want visibility in the AI bots in the trade off for having our content being indexed and synthesized and used by them? That's a completely legitimate approach if you've made that decision intentionally from a business standpoint. Or do we want to say, no, I don't want that, but I'm going to focus on traffic. And instead, I'm going to adapt to this new reality and I'm going to try to build traffic in other ways. I'm going to try to grow my owned audience. I'm going to grow my email newsletter list and look for other news distribution channels. I'm going to finally get to it. I'm going to build that iOS and Android app, which you can get through third-party companies relatively cheap now. So I'm actually have desktop space on my clients' devices, right? Those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. I'm actually going to have a legit social media strategy and not just throw an article at it here or there and hope to God it comes through, right? That's what I'm talking about. So that might help a little bit on that. Leo Cloudflare's bot protection on AI bots. I don't believe that there's a revenue access, although that's a very interesting idea. That actually may be something that could legitimately work. If Cloudflare or AWS were to get together and say, hey, we will give you the option to allow AI bots to come in if they do a little licensing fee. That's an interesting idea. I don't see it happening, but that's okay. It says, this may be a dumb question, but Google is crawling and indexing our content for search. What's to stop them feeding that info to Gemini? So I guess technically, Chris, they could, but there's actually different user agents. So like Google Extended is what Google uses for Gemini. There's other ones that are specifically used for Gemini, and Google's been pretty legit about their usage of this and pretty straight up saying, hey, these are the bots that we're using for our AI. This is the stuff that we're using for general search. So far, they're keeping that relatively separated. Then again, what are they doing in the back end? Is it feasible? They could say, okay, screw that. You know what? Let's just go ahead and take all the search stuff and shove that into Gemini too. I think that there's nothing technically preventing them from doing it, but everything I've seen so far hasn't shown that has been the case. But that's a very, very, very good question. Any other questions about this? Okay. I am going to answer a couple more questions. I just want to throw this out for you guys. Go to Nearview Media. Just search up Nearview Media, nearviewmedia.com. Just sign up for my newsletter. I do not ever sell or give away these names to anybody. I send an email basically once a week, and every week I do some sort of a training on something, some sort of digital media tip or strategy for that. So I'll throw that out as a shameless plug. But let's go back to here. Remember when search and GAM, Google Ad Manager, weren't going to combine, then they did it. Yeah. I mean, everything changes. There's nothing preventing anything from happening. It's all about adapting. It's all about adapting. It's just keeping your finger on the pulse. That's okay. I know what you meant. It's just keep your finger on the pulse, adapt, and build your business. Focus on it's first of all, the number one thing is create unique, valuable content that serves your readers. Start with that. If you're starting with that and you're not just throwing commodity information out there that anybody can get, that you're already ahead of the game. And then number two, work on building your own direct relationship with your audience. The more we can relieve our reliance on search, relieves our reliance on the impact of chat bots. That's my biggest recommendation for y'all. And then if you do choose to block AI bots, it's the robots.txt, your web application firewall. Consider geo-blocking. And then make sure you block the back door of Common Crawl and Wayback Machine. At an LMA conference, we heard a presentation from Tollbit to monetize searches from AI bots, putting a paywall up. So I have not worked personally with Tollbit very much. Um, there's all different kinds of ways you can monetize things. I am more of a fan of keeping things simple. You will hear this, yeah, throughout everything that I work on here. Um, Micropayments have just not really taken off. They've been tried for years now. They really haven't taken off that well. They are here occasionally, but they just don't. They haven't taken off. I'd have to dive into Tollbit a little bit more and understand what it is. But this gets into the whole audience development strategy, which is probably a bit beyond the scope of this. But I'll check them out. I appreciate the heads up on that. Um, Melissa says, "What if you're on a platform like Ghost? Do they do any of this blocking for you?" Um, okay, so Ghost is like an open source um, publishing platform, right? If I remember, basically, it's a publishing platform, kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm familiar with Ghost now. Um, Honestly, I don't know. I don't have any of my clients who use Ghost. So you'd have to talk with them about this and show them this webinar and say, hey, what are you guys doing here? How do you handle this? So I wish I could know, but I'm not familiar with that particular platform that well. None of my clients use that. Alvaro says, I hear you comment on apps. As a cost-effective approach, what do you think of starting with progressive web apps, PWAs, and seeing if the cost ROI makes sense for a native app? That's uh, you either do an app or don't do an app. If you do a PWA, it's not going to show up in the app stores. It's not going to have the same impact as an app. You can do an app. There are ways to do it. I will share with you. I get nothing from this, by the way. I have no agreement with them. My favorite one to use is called MobileLoud. And MobileLoud, I'll just share it here. I've launched multiple apps on their platform. It's not ridiculously expensive. Like I have to spend $20,000, $30,000, but they basically do like an annualized fee. So you can say it's $400 a month to get a full iOS Android app up and going, built on the mobile responsive version of your website. So it doesn't have to be like a $30,000 investment anymore. There's other platforms out there to do it. That just happens to be one that I've used in the past. So Alvaro, I hope that helps. I would not recommend a PWA, progressive web app. I'd recommend a native iOS Android app. It's going to be a much better way to go to get things going if you're going to go down that route. Um, any other questions out there? All right. Lindsay, is there anything else from your side, or
No,
should we
I
call it a
think we're
wrap?
great. I appreciate all of the comments and the questions, and it's nice to have the interaction even though we are virtual and on a webinar. So appreciate everybody. Like I said, today's presentation has been recorded. You will be receiving the link and everything directly from Eric and his team in like probably the next 24 to 48 hours. And
Yeah, it'll get published on Thursday, and
yep.
so we'll send everybody the information probably out on Thursday afternoon, I would say.
Okay, perfect. And if you guys have any questions, Eric put up his information and we will see you at our next webinar. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Have an awesome day.